last week or something roughly then, called On 2D Conformal Field Theories with Two Characters. So this is a slightly mathematical work which is a continuation of something I did here in TI for 27 years ago. Not many people can say that. Maybe even Shiraz can't say that.
No, Shai can't.
Okay. So good. So, that's also a sign of kind of impending retirement. You start digging out your papers from 27 years ago. But turned out this was very entertaining, and so I'd like to try and entertain you with this. So this is the place where I work, and you're all cordially invited to visit. Good. I'm not going to review everything about conformal field theory, unfortunately, but I have a feeling that most people here know quite a bit about it. I'll review only the things that I need. For example, Virasoro algebra is something that I won't be discussing, but it's implicit in a lot of the discussion. So let me just start by making a fairly unobjectionable yes.
Rajesh, did you have a question?
No. The camera should be focused on the slides.
Okay, so as I said, this is a kind of unobjectionable statement that this is how we write the partition function of any quantum field theory as a Hilbert space trace, and this counts the degeneracy of states at each fixed value of energy, and this has a natural generalization to the trace of e to the minus beta h minus I theta j, where j is the angular momentum operator of the theory and theta is an angle value variable conjugate to it. And we can define a parameter, complex parameter tau, which combines theta and beta, and write the partition function in this way as z of tau and tau bar as a trace of q to some operator L0 and q bar to the operator L0 bar, where L0 and L0 bar, L0 is defined here as this complex combination of Hamiltonian and angular momentum, and L0 bar is its complex conjugate. Likewise, q bar is the complex conjugate of this, so it has a minus as well as a tau bar upstairs. So this is the partition function again of any quantum field theory. Now, if it's a conformal field theory, then you can show that the same operator quantity, which is the Hilbert space trace, is also writable as a path integral for the Euclidean theory on a torus with modular parameter tau. I do want to emphasize, because it's often forgotten, at least I learned this in the 80s from work of Witten and others, that the duality between operator computation and path integral computation is fundamental. In the operator computation, you always know which is space and which is time, and you can never mix them up. But in the path integral computation, if it's Euclidean, then you cannot know which is space and which is time, and therefore any interchange, the path integral will be blind to it. That in turn will give you a constraint on the operator content of the theory. So it's a very important duality, and one which we often take for granted. Now, because this partition function is the path integral on a torus, we can borrow a profound result from mathematics, which says that the complex structure of the torus is unchanged if we perform a modular transformation on tau, which is interpreted here. I should have drawn it as, so we take the torus, write it as a unit length vector here, and then this is the complex parameter tau. And so if we perform this projective transformation with integer coefficients on tau, then the torus is unchanged, and therefore the path integral is unchanged, and therefore the partition function must be unchanged. And so we have an infinite set of constraints that z of a CFT as a function of tau and tau bar is the same as z of the same CFT as a function of gamma tau and gamma tau bar, and this is called modular invariance. Now, in a physical system, these constraints are far from obvious. This looks very mathematical, and in a physical system, we should be impressed by the fact that, for example, if we take theta to be 0 and choose this particular gamma, then we learn that the partition function at a temperature 1 over beta is the same as the partition function at temperature beta. So high temperature and low temperature expansions of the theory are the same. That's very non-trivial and striking. And in fact, this is just one example of many constraints that modular invariance provides on the operator content of any conformal field theory. Now 2D conformal invariance is very universal. It applies to phase transitions, to string worldsheet theory, and it also provides the conformal field theory dual to ADS3 gravity, which is more of the motivation today. And in view of this universality, modular invariance is a very interesting thing to try and understand. And it's particularly interesting in the context of a class of conformal field theories called rational conformal field theories. And for these, the partition function, which a priori is some function of tau and tau bar, and it's real, is writable as the sum of essentially mod squares of some holomorphic objects chi I of tau, which are a set of p independent holomorphic functions on the moduli space of the torus. This Mij is a matrix which sometimes can be non-diagonal, but for this talk it's enough to take it as delta ij. So then this is nothing but the sum of chi I of tau mod squared summed over finitely many terms. The extreme case where p is 1 tells us that z is the mod squared of a holomorphic function. That's a very strong statement and it constrains z enormously. But suppose it's the sum of mod squared of two different functions. That obviously will give a lot of constraints, although not as many as if it was just mod squared of one function. And these are the things we call characters, and this is an expansion of the partition function over characters. And there's an important result, I haven't mentioned it here, which says that if this kind of statement is true, then many things about the conformal field theory are rational. In particular, its central charge and its conformal dimensions are all rational numbers. I think this was proved first by Anderson and Moore, which is a paper I'll mention a little bit later.
So you mean, for example, the fact that the sum is over a finite number?
Yes. The fact that the sum is over a finite set makes typically the numerical exponents of the theory, including the central charge and conformal dimensions, be rational numbers. And so it's natural to call this rational conformal field theory.
Now, are chi I taus characters of Virasoro algebra or some larger algebra?
They're just called characters at the moment, and in fact, the approach we'll take is that although they can often be characters of the Virasoro algebra in the mathematical sense of characters, or they could be characters of some other higher spin or Kac-Moody algebra, but in fact, they could also be just things that we don't know what they are characters of, but they satisfy this equation. So for the purpose of CFT, we'll just call them characters anyway, regardless of knowing what algebra they are of.
So just the fact that it's holomorphic times anti-holomorphic plus holomorphic times anti-holomorphic.
That's exactly right. That we call those characters. Obviously, it's a goal to understand when these characters are characters in the mathematical sense, trace over the Cartan subalgebra of some algebra, some infinite dimensional algebra, including the conformal algebra. Sometimes we know and sometimes we don't, and that's also one of the future goals of the work I'm going to describe today. Now, you can also imagine that if this P is very large, like a million, then it's not a huge constraint on the theory, because then it's hard to distinguish such a sum from an infinite sum. But if P is 1, 2 or 3, then it's a big constraint, and so we'll be interested in small values of the number of characters and try to see what constraints they give us.
So just to get clear, in the case P equals 1, is that the special case of these holomorphic these are theories with C equals 24, 48 and so on?
Actually, multiples of 8.
Oh, 8, I see.
Yeah, and 16 is important. E8 cross E8 is an example, SO32. So we'll come to those in a minute. Okay. Now, to be a good QFT, so you need that this expression, which is the bilinear expression of Z as bilinear in the characters, is compatible with the fact that Z is a power series expansion of the form trace e to the minus beta h. And this will be so if the characters individually are power series expansions in Q, only Q, because they depend only on tau, and Q is exponential of tau. So the characters alone should have a power series expansion in powers of Q. And the way the expansion, so this equation is very important. You'll have to remember this notation. So I labels which character, 0, 1 up to p minus 1, where 0 is a special character called the identity character. Q is raised to an integer power n, which is summed over with coefficients an, but there's also a fractional part in the exponent q to the alpha I, which could as well be outside the summation. And those are the exponents of the theory, and these alphas are identified with hi minus c by 24. C is the central charge and H is the conformal dimension of the associated primary. And AN is the degeneracy not of the full CFT but only of the character. Obviously the degeneracy of the CFT will be a function of these things. But here we require that each character has degeneracies which are positive integers. So actually the entire structure of states in this theory is classified into towers above different primaries, and each tower for physical reasons has positive integer degeneracies.
And the fact that your characters have number plus integers after that, these
Yes.
are integers,
Yes.
that sounds like you have some symmetry algebra.
So that's the expectation from conformal field theory, because the Virasoro algebra is always there, and that alone probably, I suspect that actually I haven't gone into the details of this Anderson-Moore paper in a while. I suspect these are the kind of things that went into that thinking in that paper.
And sorry, just to understand, when you say in order to define a good QFT, so this is a set of very reasonable conditions, but
It's not sufficient. No, I'll come to this.
I was going to ask a couple of questions, sorry, which is, if they are not met, what is the sense in which you don't have a good QFT?
So, for example, supposing the ANs are negative, some of them are
that
negative.
clearly
Supposing AN is a rational number which can't be normalized to be integer, that also could be a problem. For example, if this is we'll see that if this is the identity character, then the first A, the A0, has to be 1, non-degeneracy of the vacuum. But we'll see that we'll be able to determine only ratios of all these ANs with the lowest one. If that ratio is rational and not integer for the identity character, then we are lost, because we can't normalize that character by making the ground state degenerate. We could, but we don't know what that is. So these are the kind of constraints. We'll see that often this nuisance of these being unnecessarily rational when they should be integer, or other things which we will see, or negative, are all problems which will rule out consistent theories. However, we'll see that they will always be rational. So being rational is somehow almost guaranteed by the RCFT structure, but being good rational numbers means they should be positive when they're supposed to be. We'll see more details as we go along. Now I said that P equals 0 is special, and so H0 is the dimension of the identity operator, which would be 0, and A00, which means the lowest degeneracy of the identity character, should be 1. That alone will guarantee that the whole theory has a unique vacuum.
You won't.
Sorry. Yeah.
Just very quick.
Yeah.
You won't require HI to be positive or anything.
No, it can be. Yeah, we won't require unitarity. Unitarity requires HI to be positive, but we won't require it. Yes.
So you're looking at CFT with just P primary total, right?
Yeah. Okay. Good point. So P characters need not be P primaries. There are two ways that can happen. One is that there could be more primaries, but some of them have symmetries which make them have the same character. Typical example, which is very, very common, is when you have a complex primary and its complex conjugate. They have exactly the same character. So you get 2 times that character, but it's still the number of independent characters is less than the number of primaries.
So the
yeah.
A and I's could be bigger than 1, in which case you may have the primaries with the same A0 attribution.
No, actually A0, okay, so there's a slight difference.
Not A0, but the higher, which one?
No, the higher are just the degeneracy above the ground state of that character. I'll tell you what could, if there were multiple primaries with the same character, Mij would be 2, for example, so it would be delta Ij, but not 1, 1, 1, it might be 1, 2, 2, if there are many two-fold degenerate. So it need not be delta Ij.
Yes.
That's a nice example.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not put into the character. The characters are just at the minimum number they need to be. And that's very important, because you can have theories with lots of different symmetry algebras in them, but still, let's say, few characters, because somehow all the states combine into. So the key thing is the independence of alpha I. See, if alpha I are different, characterizes the characters, and any two which have the same alpha I will be grouped into the same character. You can also have a reverse situation where there's no character. So there are apparently many characters, but actually one of them is spurious for some reason. We'll see some situations like that.
And is the fact that Mij and delta Ij important for the identification of I's with primaries?
No. You could have, so there are famous examples where Mij is not delta Ij, But then you see what happens. This is not a very well-defined question, because suppose I have a bunch of chi-i's, and supposing I have a matrix Mij that's not delta ij, and I have this partition function, it usually happens, or in fact it always happens, that I can take linear combinations of chi-i, and then it's diagonal after that. So non-diagonal invariants in CFT are diagonal invariants of some other characters.
And these linear combinations will preserve all these integrality properties?
Yes. And that's exactly, they occur only when they can occur. Otherwise, in general, in explicit cases they may not occur, but in certain cases they may.
So like all these AD invariants,
Yeah.
you have chosen different
Exactly.
bases.
AD invariants exactly arise when Mij are taken to be not. So A invariants are when Mij is identity. That's for a special class of theories, the minimal models. The A invariants are Mij's identity. For the D and E invariants, you need to take this to be something else. But you can also take just a subset of the characters, which are linear combinations less than P in number of these guys, and then make the diagonal invariant of that. That also is that's the same invariant, right? I mean, it's clear. If I just took a few linear combinations of chi and wrote a diagonal thing and then expanded it, I would get cross terms. But those cross terms can be also incorporated in a different matrix M, which is not diagonal. So this is not a unique.
No, this is not unique.
Yeah.
But I guess it wasn't obvious to me somehow that if you had a off-diagonal modular invariant, that you could always.
Yeah, it's not obvious actually. I'm not sure if it's always true, but it's true in all the examples I know. I am not 100% sure if it's always true. In any case, though, today I'm more concerned with classifying the characters rather than finding all the sets given the characters. So in that sense, that's why I said that this is good enough. Okay. Now, modular invariance of the full partition function will be ensured if the characters transform as vector-valued modular functions, which means under modular transformations they don't transform into themselves, but into linear combinations of themselves which depend on the modular transformation in question. And if this matrix V has the property that V dagger MV is M, and if M happen to be the identity, then of course this equation tells us that this V is unitary. So modular invariance of the full partition function doesn't require the characters to be modular invariant, but only to form a set which are called vector-valued modular functions, more generally vector-valued modular forms. And this has become a slightly popular theme in mathematics in the last couple of decades. Earlier people would talk of modular forms, now there are mathematicians who have papers on vector-valued modular forms. So that's simply the definition. Of course, there's more to modular forms, which I'll come to. Okay, now it's a mathematically well-posed problem, I believe. What are all the possible sets of characters that can describe, let me say, rational CFT? Okay. How do you find all of them? That would amount to a classification of conformal field theories. Now, there are two parts in this question. One is, what set of characters satisfy all the requirements I have given you up to now? That's a necessary but not sufficient condition to describe a conformal field theory, because for a conformal field theory you need certain additional physical inputs, like the correlators should make sense, have crossing symmetry, there should be fusion rules, they should also make sense. There's a Berlinde formula which relates fusion rules to modular transformations. And I'm not going to go into any of these points, though they are important. The question we are going to address is, what about the answer to question 1? What characters can we find which at least satisfy these minimal requirements? Then if we find any at all, then we have to subject them to the tests in part 2. And so I call that a higher order. Okay. So now we
just ask about that. If we just had consistent correlation functions on every genus, would that subsume the condition for?
I think it does. I think it does. So, but then again, that's every genus, and here we are really working on genus 1. So, yeah. So I'm going to discuss a program. I don't know why based is here. It's a typo. To classify consistent characters using modular invariant differential equations. And this program was initiated here in TIFR in 1988 in collaboration with Samir Mathur and Ashok Sen. And our original motivation was to understand the space of 2D CFTs for application either to critical phenomena or string theory. And that motivation hasn't gone away. We obviously didn't succeed in the project that we started. It went a certain distance and then stopped. But there are some nice new motivations today for the work, which is why I feel that it's appropriate to revive it. One is a seminal paper, very little known in the conformal field theory and physics community in general, by Zhu in 1996, a mathematician, who found a relation between null vectors of extended chiral algebras and modular differential equations. So broadly, his work provides an explanation why when there are null vectors of a certain kind, then there are modular invariant differential equations. So this could be sort of a basis to think of classifying conformal field theory. It has been used sporadically in the literature, and I'll mention one use in 2007 or 8 due to Gaberdiel and collaborators, who actually spoke about it here during the monsoon workshop in 2008. So this is, I would say, a new motivation to study modular invariant differential equations. The other motivation, which certainly did not exist in 1988, is ADS3 CFT2. And notably in Witten's beautiful paper on ADS3 gravity, which is called something like 3D Gravity Revisited or something, and the Maloney-Witten follow-up, and many follow-ups after that. It's interesting because in particular Witten focuses on single character CFTs, about which I'll say just a few words. And for example, there's this paper by these authors who try to make some general rules about ADS3 duals of CFTs with small central charge and small numbers of characters, which is kind of the case I'm considering. This is of course very different from semi-classical ADS, as you can imagine, and it has different rules, and that's part of the fun. And so I would say, and partly as justification for speaking here today, that this is the case of quantum space-time. Studying a CFT with low central charge is quantum space-time. I think that's the fair slogan, and I'm going to use it. Okay. Now another thing is, of course, that in 1988 it was not very respectable in physics to say we have evidence up to 100 coefficients that something is good and therefore we conjecture. Mathematicians do it, but they are very sincere about what's a conjecture and what's proof. In physics, as Bolchinski once said after 1994, anything that can't be disproved in 5 minutes is a conjecture in physics. And but at least it certainly made this kind of conjecturing respectable. And everything we say here will be conjectured, because we'll find things that maybe CFTs look like CFTs up to 5,000 levels in the Q expansion. At that time in 1988, 100 levels was a kind of straining your little PC, not little, a huge PC in your office, which barely could, get started in about 10 minutes, and you have to keep. But now, you can do 5,000 levels, up to 5,000 levels in a minute. You can probably do much faster, much more if you're good at this stuff. We are just average at Mathematica so far. But anyway, the point I'm making is that now looking for evidence and writing a paper is no longer the scandal that it used to be in 1988. So, okay. Now let me review a little about one-character theories. This is off the point of my talk, but it will illustrate in some way the importance of what we are trying to do. For one-character theories, Z is chi squared, chi mod squared. So the question is, what are all the chi's such that chi mod squared is modular invariant? For that, chi has to be modular invariant up to a phase. There's nothing else. It can't be vector valued. It's just one thing. So it has to be a function of the Klein J invariant, which in turn is the ratio of the Eisenstein series E4 to the third power divided by this linear combination of two Eisenstein series. The Eisenstein series are defined like this, as an infinite sum over this thing with over integers m and n, obviously including 0, 0. And these are modular forms of weight 2k. So E2k of gamma tau is this power of C tau plus d on E2k of tau. And they have weight 2k. This is the by definition the weight of a modular form is this power. So E4 has weight 4, so its cube has weight 12. But E6 squared also has weight 12, so this difference also has weight 12. And the ratio therefore has weight 0, so J is modular invariant. What's unique about it is that you would think that it would have poles because it has delta downstairs, but fortunately delta is a very specific modular form which doesn't have zeros in the interior of moduli space, so J doesn't have poles anywhere except up at I infinity. So J is special. I should mention that we expect, you could question this, but we expect that the characters of our CFT and the partition function are not going to develop any poles as a function of tau.
Okay. So,
Yes.
so when you say it's just one character, it just means that you have the identity.
Yeah, so it just means, it doesn't, well, it means that you have just one character. So you have, Z is mod chi squared. But when you say just the identity, no, it doesn't mean the only primary in the theory is the identity. So for example, I'll mention one example which has 196,883 primaries. It's a very famous example.
But by primary theory, you mean Dirac primaries. You could have just one primary of some large algebra.
Of some large algebra. That's right. Could have, but even that's not very well established that it does have.
Yeah.
But okay, like if you compare it, the dimension or weight of this, then this will be 0, right?
Yeah, but that's the point. So when you read off exactly, so if I have a character which is a function of j, and I read off what is the exponent alpha, and from there try to find out h and c, I'll only be able to pull out the value of c because there's only an identity character, and therefore and h0 will be 0 because h0 is always 0. Okay, but as I said, this doesn't mean that there aren't more primaries in the theory, because primary requires an algebra with respect to which it's primary. So there could be many primaries, but you can't. But the only thing you could say is they have integer conformal dimensions because they all line up in the same tower as the identity character. So this is a phenomenon we sort of understand a little bit in some cases, that if there are integer valued primaries, integer dimension primaries. So with current algebra, for example. Okay, there are things, the currents themselves are Virasoro primaries, but in this classification the current would not be a new primary, it would simply generate the tower of the identity. So this is the sense in which primaries and characters are not identical things.
And there we know what algebra.
There we know exactly the algebra, and in fact we'll see a nice example.
Sorry,
Yes.
just to go back. If it weren't for this requirement of no poles,
Yeah.
then of course there are many more.
That's right.
variables,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So that was not one of the requirements when you first
Okay,
listed
I
it
should
out.
have put it there.
But
also.
just to ask,
Yeah.
just what would go so wrong if you had it?
I think if you have a partition function, that would mean the partition function has poles as a function of the temperature. That doesn't sound.
Maybe some phase transition.
I think at finite C that's impossible. At C equals infinity, this happens with phase transitions.
Yeah.
But it would be like a compact CFT or something that develops an infinite number of degrees of freedom and such.
Right.
Because you're on the torus.
Yeah, it could happen. I think if you had some direction in space which went off.
Went off. Yes,
Yeah.
that I agree. That could happen. So our CFT, so rational CFT somehow we expect it should.
Compact CFT or
Yes,
something.
compact.
Yeah.
Okay. Now because J is the ratio of two modular forms of the same weight, it is modular invariant. And of course, this is the unique thing you can make which has these properties, that it's holomorphic, modular invariant, and has no poles in the interior of modular space. And so anything else that's modular invariant must be a function of J. So for a one character theory, chi naught of tau, the only character, has to be just a function of J. Okay. For some suitable function, and it's fairly non-trivial, even we got ourselves confused and actually put something wrong in the preprint which we need to correct, about what functions are allowed. So let's try to see what functions are allowed.
Sorry,
Yeah.
you could have had non-invariance up to a phase.
Yes,
Does that
but
give you more
that's, no, it doesn't. J itself has So okay, J is invariant, but that non-invariance up to a phase allows us certain specific fractional powers of J, which I'll come to. That's the E8 example. Now J itself has this famous power series expansion and all positive coefficients. And so one interesting example is supposing I took chi naught to be J plus a constant, where the constant was anything between minus 744 and plus infinity. In any integer between minus 744 and plus infinity. Each one of those defines a different one character theory in my language. Okay, that seems a little drastic. Yeah.
Sorry, say that part again. What was that?
If I took J plus a constant as chi 0, so f of J, this is J, but let me take f of J to be a very simple example, J plus a constant. Okay. Now that constant clearly can't be below minus 744 because then this would turn negative and I would lose my interpretation, and it must be integer. Beyond that, there are no constraints. Okay. If the constant is exactly minus 744, then this term is not there. And then this is the famous partition function of the monster CFT. So there is a CFT known, constructed in gory detail, whose single character is J minus 744. Okay, and it's given in physics by compactifying 24 bosons on a Leech lattice modulo Z2. And the Leech lattice property is that it has no points of length squared 1. Or length squared, 2 in those units, and that is the same as that this term is 0. So these just to give you some examples. But there are other J's which have different constants here which also correspond to known partition functions. For example, E8 cross E8 cross E8 is also an example. It's different from the monster CFT. It has the same partition function J plus a constant, but the constant is different. In fact, this is the constant because this is 3 times 248.
And the fact that you have Q minus 1 is the fact that C is 24.
C is 20. So Q minus 1, I should have said, this is Q to the H minus C by 24, but for one character H is 0 and C therefore is 24. So these are just some examples. The general rule is F should be a polynomial in J such that it has positive integer coefficients in this expansion and no poles. But there's a subtlety which will affect us for the rest of this work, so I mention it now. The moduli space where tau is valued is this region, and it has two privileged points. This is tau equals e to the 2 pi e to the I pi by 3, and this is tau equals I. And these points, because they occur on the boundary and there's an angle deficiting, because this point is identified when you go, and this point is identified with this point, so it's made by folding. So these are points of order 2 and 3 respectively, and J happens to vanish at this point, and J minus 1728 vanishes at that point. Sorry ICTS, I'm sure they know this by heart, but anyway, you're showing it to them now. So J vanishes at this point and J minus 1728 vanishes at that point. And as you can go back now, as a consequence, certain fractional powers of J are allowed, and the general rule which appears in our 1988 paper is J to the 1/3, J minus 1728 to the half times a polynomial in J, chosen so that the whole thing has positive integral coefficients in Q. Okay. Interestingly, this is wrongly written. This should be J to the alpha by 3 where alpha is 0, 1 or 2. This should be J minus 1728 to the beta by 2 where beta is 0 or 1, and then it's P of J. So you can have this, but you don't have to have these 3 factors. Okay, I think that should be clear enough. But notice, for example, that if I only had the middle term, J minus 1728 to the half, that doesn't have positive integral coefficients, because 744 minus 1728 is negative. So that's bad, that's not a good character. But who knows whether multiplying by some P of J might fix that. Then it's good. So it's quite a large set of CFTs that you get in this way. But the point is, this is the answer to the question, what are all the possible characters for one character theory? So there's nothing more to be done from the perspective that I'm discussing.
Sorry, Sunny, I'm being stupid, but I missed why take J to the 1/3 was what you said about the folding. Yes.
So J vanishes here.
Yes.
At this point. But this is a point of order 1/3, or before point of order 1/3. Therefore, effectively, although J has a simple 0 there, that's 3 times the number of zeros it has to have there. The minimum number of zeros that you must have there is 1/3 of the 0 of J because of it being an overfold point. So you're allowed to take the 1/3 power without introducing any branch cut. You can take any power you like, but it will normally introduce a branch cut. But at these points, you can take exactly the 1/3 power of J and here exactly the half power of this combination, because those things vanish there more than they need to at those points. Okay. Now, here already you can see that I've given you a huge list of functions, and nobody thinks that this corresponds to, all of these correspond to conformal field theories. So therefore, what we do in 2 character theories is certainly not going to be enough to settle any question. Witten in particular proposed, for reasons associated to ADS-3 and BTZ black holes and the spectrum of the 3D gravity, that we should consider polynomials in J. So he only considered a subset of these where the first two terms are absent and there's only P of J. Moreover, P is tuned so that a certain number of the first so many coefficients vanish, and he called those extremal CFTs. And he proposed that and they start with the monster CFT where the first coefficient 744 vanishes, and there's a bunch of those. And he proposed that these are all dual to ADS gravity.
Question?
Again, probably this is very silly. So certainly the form that you wrote with the 1/3 power and the half power, and then the polynomial, that certainly for the reasons that you mentioned is allowed this thing. But can't it be more general in that you have something in which you have linear combinations of things just with the 1/3 power? So this term plus something with the so does it have to have both the things together?
Yeah, that's a good question. So first of all, of course, it need not have those powers at all. So there should have been some exponents there which could have been 0. But your question is, for example, can I have J to the 1/3 plus J minus 1728 to the half? And I think this is not going to be a one character theory, because there has to be a fixed leading power and then everything has to be integer in the Q expansion. And what happens is J to the 1/3 starts with the power Q to the minus 1/3, which is central charge 8. But this other thing, J minus 1728 to the half, has central charge 12. So if I add two things with central charge 8 and 12, I'm not sure actually. It's something to think, I'm sorry, I'm really not sure. Whether those can be considered as piling up to be one character, maybe they can, because there's an integer difference. So, I've never seen any such proposal, frankly, but it's,
What is the problem though? I mean, just to understand, in terms of the rules you laid down, it seems okay.
There's an integer difference in C, but not an integer difference in H's, right? Because that's C by 24.
Good point. Yes. Shiraz got it right. So the point is that there's an integer difference in C, but not by 24. So if I had J to the 1/3, that would be C equals 8. J to the half, which is naively C equals 12, I could reinterpret saying that it's C equals 8 plus a primary of dimension 4 over 24, which is 1/6. Okay. Now if I have a primary of dimension 1/6, then it's not a one character theory. Good. So I think, Rajesh, the answer to your question is that one of whatever is the overall exponent due to these things, the rest can only be a polynomial in J and not fractions of J. Does that make sense? It's not vanished. Oh, I see a cross on their microphone.
Sorry, if you had the other primary of dimension 1/6, I mean, maybe the whole thing is part of an extended character, like you said, for the...
No, it can't be, because the extended character can only admit integer primaries.
Right.
Integer dimension primaries. So because the difference so the effective C of J to the 1/3, J minus this to the half, and J itself are respectively 8, 12 and 24. Okay, so you have to fix one of these as the actual C. And if C is a multiple of 8, which isn't a multiple of 24, or if it's a multiple of 12, which isn't a multiple of 24, then the only things that can correct the leading behavior are polynomials in J. So actually this is right, this what is on the screen is still right. However, the 1/3 and half being optional, either they are there or they are not there. They could both be there, so that would be C equals 20. 20 is also okay in principle, but no linear combination of some of these fractional things is allowed.
Okay, so there are 4 discrete choices in some sense.
Yeah, if you like, I think that may be correct. Yeah, there are 4 classes. But again, it's, the simplest C equals 12 theory just doesn't exist. It would be the middle term with no other polynomial, because that has negative degeneracies. And I don't know any case where there's a way to make that positive by choosing the polynomial. So, I don't know actually. But J to the 1/3 does exist, and that's the character of E8.
Again, could you have had 2/3 there?
Yeah, 2/3 is the character of E8 cross E8 and SO32 both. So J to the 2/3 is why the heterotic string exists. Thanks to J to the 2/3, precisely.
So you can have, and can you have 2/3 with the J minus this to the power half?
Yes, you can do that.
What is that?
You can do that, but again, the problem with J minus 1728 is that alone it has negative coefficients. It has one negative coefficient. So if I multiply it with something, it's my job to recheck whether that result is all positive, and that I actually don't know.
And these guys with the non-trivial powers are modular invariant only up to phase.
Yeah, the guys with the fractional powers are modular invariant only up to phase, which is why the E8 and E8 cross E8 characters are only describe a chiral part of a full theory, but the E8 cross E8 cross E8, which is J, is actually a full chiral theory by itself. So only for C being a multiple of 24. Okay. Now the point is that after Witten proposed this tuning the polynomial in J to make certain coefficients vanish, Gabardine raised an objection saying, well, if that is so, then he argued how the null vector structure of that theory must look, and found that it conflicts with the proposed property. So somehow the relation between chiral algebras and null vectors conflicts with what is the differential equation. So I haven't got to differential equation, but let me just summarize by saying he found a conflict between certain requirements imposed on the CFT and the fact that the character undoubtedly exists. Now this was replied to by Gayotto, who said, well, look, if I have any CFT, Gabardine's conflict started at some level, central charge greater than 24K, where K was 42 or something. So that was, he didn't have an objection to low central charge, but only to extremal CFTs for high central charge. And Gayotto said, look, I can take the monster CFT and tensor it with itself 1,000,000 times, so who are you to object? So then there was actually a somewhat muted paper by Gabardine and Keller, which a little bit, says, okay, well, that's not typical. So as far as I can make out, the issue isn't even completely settled. I would check up. I'll be in Zurich next month and check up with Gabardine, but I'm not completely sure it's settled.
I see. So you're saying the original proposal that you could have a CFT where you take some polynomial in J so that some coefficients vanish.
That in general, nobody. Oh, I see. Yeah, where some coefficients vanish. Yes,
might be okay.
Might be okay. I don't know what Gabardine thinks. But if you read very carefully his paper with Keller, which is the later paper, it's much more muted in its claims, and I don't know whether the issue is considered settled or not.
And I'm really sorry, I should be better versed, but what was the great significance in Witten's paper on making some coefficients vanish? I thought the idea was that you have no primary till you hit the BTC black.
Exactly, that's the reason.
But how does that correspond to some? I'm not able to.
So I think the central charge corresponds to the radius of ADS, and then you have to look for the lightest BTC black hole as a function of that radius, and I think that matching tells you that some coefficients need to vanish up to that point.
Otherwise you'll have primaries before.
Otherwise you'll have primaries before. Okay. Now, as I said, I'm going to treat, although here I've given you an example where doubt can be cast even when the problem of classifying one characters is solved. Doubt can still be cast. So to show you that if I find you some 2-character CFTs, doubt can be cast on those as well, unless I have some sort of cast iron justification that they are real CFTs. But I'm going to treat it as a higher order question for future work. And today we'll only ask questions about finding characters analogous to what is solved for 1-character theories. So now I'll move on to the main topic, which is the following. Supposing I have more than 1 character, so then they are vector values.
Sorry, as the solution for 1-character theories was labeled by an arbitrary polynomial.
Arbitrary polynomial. Okay. And arbitrary choice of those exponents in the front, which could be 0.
Some discrete things.
Some discrete thing and arbitrary.
So an infinite amount of data.
Infinite amount of data for sure.
Yeah.
For example, you could take a polynomial in J with all positive integer coefficients and leave out the fractional guys. That's clearly satisfies all the requirements. It's a very large infinite amount of data. Okay. Now, so the question we addressed in 1988 was, okay, so characters are vector valued modular forms, but there's a bunch of them, it's a vector, so that makes the study a little complicated. It's simpler to think of them as solutions of a single modular invariant differential equation, because we know that when you have differential equations which are invariant under some symmetry, then the solutions, if it's a linear differential equation, are permuted by that symmetry. Typically, these are monodromies. This is well known in theory of Fuchsian differential equations and so on. And so it's a general proposal which I think first originated with Anderson and Moore, and then roughly at the same time by these two groups, was that you should have a differential equation for chi, where chi is an abstract quantity which we should find by solving the equation, and then it's going to be a pth order differential equation, and the p independent solutions will be the characters. If this differential operator is modular invariant, of course it can be modular invariant up to any factor because the whole thing is 0, so the equation is modular invariant, then the solutions will be vector valued modular forms already. Now, this D should be a derivative on moduli space del by del tau, where tau is this coordinate of this quantity. But that turns out to take modular forms into things which are not modular forms, because there's a factor in front when the modular form transforms, and it's like tensors in general. If I take ordinary derivatives of tensors, they are not tensors. So you have to use a connection, and conveniently there's an Eisenstein series E2, which is a little different from the E4 and E6 and higher ones, which exactly behaves like a connection. And so you have to add this to del by del tau to get a covariant derivative on moduli space. E2 is defined almost exactly like E4 and E6, except with the power 2 here, but there's a little trick. Instead of leaving out only 0, 0, you have to leave out all cases where m is 0 or n is 0. That's a crucial difference. Earlier we left out only 0, 0, one point in the sum. Now we leave out all infinitely many values of n when m is 0 and vice versa. That's because this is dangerously nearly divergent. It's like the sum of 1 over n.
So this is a connection again in what sense?
So here's the formula. So under modular transformations, it transforms homogeneously as a modular form of weight 2, but it also spits out an extra term depending on the modular transformation, namely c times c tau plus d, and the result is that when I take this and act on a modular form, existing modular form, this derivative will give me an inhomogeneous term from the weight of that modular form, and this guy will give out an inhomogeneous term which cancels that. That's its job.
Transparency again. I see. And the inhomogeneous term here though is fixed, right? So only if you had if this derivative is acting on a modular form of some particular weight, would
so the derivative, if it's acting on weight 0, then this term isn't even there because R is the weight of
I'm sorry, please explain. Yes.
So as you keep acting, R keeps growing by some even integer, and that keeps compensating. Okay, so this ensures that when you act on a form of weight 2k, D gives back a form of weight 2k plus 2. Now in the equation, you have these coefficient functions phi k, to remind you. Here they are. Now D carries a modular weight of 2. So D to the p is 2p, this is 2k. So therefore phi must have weight 2p minus 2k. So that's this statement. And so if these phi's are chosen in the differential equation to have that weight, then the whole equation is modular invariant. The differential operator is modular covariant with the weight 2p. You can throw that away because it acts on chi and makes it 0. So the whole equation is modular invariant. Now the thing is, finding coefficient functions phi which are modular covariant of weight 2p minus 2k is a finite problem under some conditions which will come to. The first naive thing you would say is that phi's should be themselves holomorphic without poles. Turns out that's wrong. They can be meromorphic, and still the solutions chi can be holomorphic without poles. So we have to face that, and that's the crucial thing. And that comes from this result. Supposing we knew the chi's that solve the equation with given phi's, then we can re-express the phi's in terms of the Wronskian of the chi's. This is a standard thing with differential equations. And the Wronskian is this kind of determinant involving all the solutions, then their first, second, third derivatives. The kth Wronskian leaves out the kth derivative. And the pth Wronskian, the last one, leaves out the last line. And these phi's turn out to be just wk over w. But you see, they are a ratio of two things. And if chi are all holomorphic, then we only know that wk and w are holomorphic. But there is no rule about whether this w has a 0 or not. It could very well have a 0. If it does, there is no rule about whether the one upstairs also has a 0 in the same place or not. It could have, it may not have. So if the guy downstairs has a 0 and the one upstairs doesn't have a 0 there, then phi k has a 4. So we have to allow for that. This complicates things considerably.
Only simple poles this way?
No, there could be higher poles. We don't know anything in principle. We just know that neither w nor wk has any poles of its own, but zeros it could just have. And the point is, those are not due to zeros of chi, because this is a complicated function of the chi's, and who knows at the end it has some zeros. Could happen. So phi k can be meromorphic, and it will be only if w has zeros, the one in the denominator, which is the last Wronskian, the one without the last line, and with all the other derivatives. So we classify differential equations of this type by the number of zeros L of the Wronskian w. It's an integer, and it will be very crucial for the rest of this talk. Now, you could ask how many zeros W can have. It turns out that it can have a fractional number L by 6 of zeros, where L can be 0, that means W has no zeros. L can be 2, that means W has a 0 here at this fractional point. But this point counts as 1/3, so it's 2 by 6. If it's here, then it's 3 by 6. If it's a double 0 here, it's 4 by 6. If it's a free 0 floating in the interior, then L is a multiple of 6. You can sort of guess. It's the usual thing for a complex plane, taking into account these fractional points. And the nice thing is that for any given value of this L, there's a finite basis of functions of only E4 and E6 from which the phi k are built. In particular, if L is 0, then we are dealing with holomorphic modular forms, and those are polynomials in E4 and E6. So E4 and E6 form a ring such that every modular form that has no poles is simply a product. So you could ask what's the modular form of weight 12? There's E4 cubed, E6 squared, so any linear combination. If you ask for weight 10, there's only E4, E6, like that. Now there's a Riemann-Roch theorem which relates the order of the differential equation, the exponents in the character, and this number L. And it says that the sum of the exponents, remember these alphas are h minus 3 by 24, is this number expressed in terms of the number of characters of the theory minus L by 6. Okay, so this, it's not very hard to work out this Riemann-Roch theorem. Again, you would have thought that it would have some integer numbers on the right side, but because of these fractional points in moduli space, these are kind of 1/12, and this is actually both are multiples of 1/6. Okay.
And what is P again? Is
the number of characters. So for the rest of this talk, P will be 2. So for the 2, I haven't even started my talk, but it's okay here.
That's right.
Yeah. So P will be 2 for the rest of the talk. So this will be 1 by 6, and then L will be 0, 2, 3, 4, whatever. Now if L is 0, then indeed phi k are holomorphic. And then we use this theorem I quoted to you, that all possible modular forms are E4 to the A, E6 to the B, with AB positive. I should have written greater than or equal to 0. But for any L, we can make these phi's out of E4, E6 and put a few of them in the denominator appropriately, because E4 and E6 have definite vanishing at specific points. And so the differential equation always has finitely many parameters. This is very important. It looks like a differential equation with some coefficient functions, but those coefficient functions are nothing but functions of E4 and E6, which for a fixed L have a finite number of parameters. And we'll look for the cases where that number is small. That will be the strategy. And once we have a differential equation, we can solve it by putting a power series expansion and just doing the series solution of the differential equation. And this will give us A and I as functions of the parameters. Remember, A and I are the degeneracies of states above the ith primary. So A and 0 are the number of states in the identity module, and A and 1 will be the number of states in the first primary and so on.
Sorry, so in this case, phi k is an arbitrary function of E6 by E4?
No, because it has to have a fixed weight also. That's
I see.
dictated. So its total weight is 2p minus 2k. So once you allow such things, even with some fixed denominators, there are only finitely many things you can allow bounded values.
So E6 by E4 has weight 2.
E6 by E4 has weight 2 and it has L equals 2 as well. So we'll see that it comes in the L equals 2 equation. But when L is 0, you can't use E6 by E4 or anything by E4. Okay. Now these degeneracies, which are calculated by solving the differential equation, are functions of continuous parameters, because I said the differential equation has parameters. Phi's are functions of these, but whatever multiplies these is just a positive, is just a real number, can be positive or negative, and any real number. So the degeneracies are functions of continuous parameters, so they are not going to be integral or even positive when we compute them from a differential equation. But for an isolated value of the parameter, once in a rare while, they will all turn out to be positive integers, all being up to 5000th level, and that's when the fun starts. That's when we can claim we have a conformal field theory. So the idea is you have this space of modular and variant differential equations, you have solutions varying as function of parameters, but there are isolated points sitting in this space where boom, you land on a conformal field theory.
And so could I ask this idea of trying to look for a differential equation? I understand technically that it will produce characters that will have the transformation property.
Yes.
But is there do you expect a physical role for this differential equation? Like you were talking about some relation to null states or something like that.
Yes. So Zhu has an argument that that kind of differential equation arises by assuming the existence of a chiral algebra, possibly of higher spin, and then the null vector relation determines the order of the differential equation and actually determines the differential equation.
So the differential equation is a sign of having a higher symmetry algebra.
In his picture, yes.
I see.
I must say that Zhu was very precise. It's a very difficult paper to read. He was precise in his claims. Gabardine and Keller slightly built up the claims to be more, I think, more strong than what Zhu said. And I think maybe, I don't know, again, I would like to verify with them, maybe the jury is a little out on how strong that relation is. Certainly, it's our next project to study Zhu's paper in some depth. It's quite old, but seems to be very profound. In particular, I should say for the interested people, Zhu uses something called conformal algebra on the torus, which is totally new to me. So these are linear combinations of ln's, which don't preserve the index. So for example, L minus 2 plus L minus 1 plus L0 with some things, but which have better properties on the torus while the original ones have better properties on the plane. So it's very, very inventive and very new from my understanding of CFD.
These are null states with respect to that.
Yeah, so he needs to use, so he'll define something he'll call L bracket minus 2, which is L ordinary minus 2 plus lower L's, and L bracket minus 3 and so on, and then do some magic with those things.
So the modular parameters enter there?
Yes, I think the modular, exactly. So the coefficients are in Eisenstein series. Yeah, exactly the point. Yeah. So that's really, it's very inventive.
So
Okay.
I have a silly question. So this is all for p greater or equal to 2.
Yes.
So there's a qualitative change that as you go to p greater than 1, then instead of having all this polynomials worth of stuff, we now have very, very few possible CFGs?
No, because the reason is that now you could, it's a good question, you could go back to my one character case and ask what is the value of L. The value of L in that case is very simple, it's actually the number of zeros of that answer of the character, because there's only one character, so the Wronskian is just the character. And that value of L keeps going up as I take higher and higher powers of J. So when I go to p greater than or equals 2, I find that for a fixed L, I may find finitely many theories. But if I change L, I'll certainly find, across all L's, I'll find infinitely many. In fact, as I'll argue, already from L equals 4 onwards, I expect there could be infinitely many theories. But L equals 0, 2 and 3 are special. Those will be the cases I'll talk about. Now, identifying these special values requires checking these degeneracies as computed from the differential equation for infinitely many levels, because who knows, at some very high level, suddenly it could go to hell. But in practice, we check things to 5,000th order. If it's going well, if it's going badly already at a lower order, fine. If it goes well, we go up to 5,000th order, and if everything's fine, then being physicists, we say, okay, here is the theory. So we call this evidence that these particular points correspond to
Do you
CFT.
check whether the integers exactly or up to some numerical?
No, exactly. So I'll show you some amusing tables.
But I'm just curious about one thing in
Yeah.
terms of this experimental check.
Yeah.
Is it the case that you have some examples which are working well up to 4999?
Yeah, good. Good. So this is really the question. So in all our examples, if it works well to even as low as 20th level, it never fails up to 5,000. However, the ones that have any problem up to 20th level develop more and more pathologies, and I'll show you that. It's beautiful. That's very convincing. It's not like, forget 4999, it's not like even at the 100th level we ever had a surprise. All surprises are visible till 20th level. Of course, this is mathematically I cannot, but there must be a theorem, mathematical theorem hidden here, because for ordinary one character things like J, there's a rule that even with theta functions, that if you know enough coefficients, you know the whole modular form by modular equations or covariance. So there must be a corresponding rule here. So somebody needs to find the number such that if we check to that number, we are rigorously through, but that's a mathematics problem which maybe we don't yet know how to do. Okay, good. So now let's look at two-character theory. So the nice thing is this is the most general two-character differential equation, d squared, d and 1. Now, the weights, by what I told you, phi 1 must have weight 2 and phi 0 must have weight 4. But if L is 0, then phi 1 can't exist because there is no weight 2 modular form, which is holomorphic. The modular forms which are holomorphic are spanned by only E4 and E6. So they start at weight 4. So phi 1 is 0 and phi 0 is E4 up to a number. And so the differential equation with L equals 0 is just this. We've taken a 2 pi I inside the derivative d because we are always going to differentiate things which depend on e to the 2 pi I term. So actually d tilde is q d by dq, which is a more sensible derivative. It removes a lot of ugly parameters in the equation. But other than doing this, it's essentially, this is the case studied by us 27 years ago. And you can expand d tilde out and you get this form from its covariant. The first d tilde on the right here is ordinary d, but the next one has the e to it. Because as it keeps acting, it builds up the modular weight. So that's the equation. Notice that there's one free parameter. Now for L equals 2, 3, 4, 5, these are the equations. And that's just by looking at the most general thing which has the right number of poles in the phi's. So this has, E4 has zeros at this point. I won't belabor this, but these are the equations for L equals 2.
And L equals 5 is the maximum.
No, it's not the maximum. There are infinitely many more. The problem is that as we go, this only shows that the number of parameters proliferates. And once L is 6, then the parameter, yes, Rajesh.
No, in the previous thing, it's the second order operator. It's a del bar square. Was it a typo or is the previous transparent thing?
This one?
No.
The equation after that, when you expanded it, there's a del bar square.
I'm sorry, that's a typo. Yeah, that's squared. Del tilde squared. Sorry, this is a typo. This should be squared. Yeah, sorry. Okay. Once L crosses 6, then the zeros can float around in the inside of moduli space. Again, you have parameters, it's just you have more and more parameters. So now let me review the old case. Again, sorry Rajesh, the typo is propagated here also. This should be squared. The first term is del tilde squared. So we simply make this series expansion and the series expansion of Eisenstein series, plug it into the equation, or as Ogre used to say in those days, plug it in. and we get this initial leakage. I hope I'm not on.
This is recorded for posterity.
It was on YouTube tonight.
No, seriously, it's going to have a website.
You should have warned me. I'm going to drop my signature.
Next time you want to send someone to the Asian with this.
Okay. So the first equation is the one where everything is A0 in this, and A0 drops out, so you get a relation between the exponents and the parameter in the equation. And the point of view we like to take is that in this way we eliminate mu as a product of the two exponents, because if this equation has two roots, alpha 0, alpha 1, then mu is just the product. Moreover, the sum is fixed to be 1/6, but that's actually the Riemann-Roch theorem. If you check the Riemann-Roch theorem, you find that the sum of the alphas is exactly 1/6. So that's consistent with this equation. And then we find that the ratio A1 upon A0 is m, which we call M1, is this function of alpha. And eventually what we do now, we eliminate mu as this product of alpha 0, alpha 1, and we can write the first level degeneracy of any of the characters in terms of the corresponding exponent. Now, since the exponent is expected to be rational, this thing will be rational. The problem is, nobody says it has to be integer nor positive. These are the two things that it doesn't have to be. Okay. Now, if we massage this a bit, we get interesting consequences which are very general, beside over and above classifying theories. For example, notice that here we can put I equals 0, so alpha 0, but alpha 0 is minus c by 24. By a little bit of massaging, you can get this equation, which is a quadratic for 5c with integer coefficients. So this tells you that 5c must be an integer. So c is a multiple of 1/5. So two character theories with L equals 0 must have central charge multiple of 1/5. But that's the result. An amusing result. That's not all. This tells you that c must be below 10, because otherwise this will turn negative. Okay. So that's another interesting result. So this L equals 0 theories must have a bounded range of c, and also that they are multiples of 1/5. Now let's try to find all the characters which satisfy this. So we take this equation and find its discriminant, which is this squared, b squared minus 4ac. This thing must be rational in order for 5c to be rational. In fact, it's integer. So this thing actually has to be integer. Now, if this thing is integer, then the thing inside the square root is integer squared. So we have this kind of relation that this is given by some integer squared. So we have
what was
M1 is the first level degeneracy of the identity character. So given that the identity character has one state at the bottom, it's the number of states at the next level. So must be positive integer. Now there's a nice way, this is a Diophantine equation, and you should look for all solutions of this with M1 being a positive integer. Turns out there are rather few, only about 10 or 15 of them. The way to see that is to shift n to a new integer n tilde plus exactly these combinations. With that you cancel this square and this square, and you get a new term, and if you reorganize it, you find that M1 is this function of n tilde, and now you see that for this to be a positive integer, it's clear that n tilde is very constrained. It must first of all divide 7200. It must also be even integer, and there's also a duality in this equation between n going to some constant over n, so you can reduce that range by half. So you can do all these things, and it turns out it's a negative even integer between, this is n tilde, sorry, typo again, between 0 and 120, and it must also divide this, and you can identify n tilde with 14,400 over n tilde. With all this, these are all the possible theories. We've only examined one constraint, the first level degeneracy in the identity character. Being positive integer already rules out from a continuous parameter down to 22 possible theories. We have a lot still to test. Each of these can be used to find the corresponding value of c, because from n tilde I find m1, from m1 I find the exponent. That exponent alpha 0 gives me c. Okay? And thereafter I can plug that in back to the differential equation and get the other degeneracies, and I can also do it for the non-trivial prime. So there's lots to check. We did all that in 1988, and this is the table we published then. These turn out to be the allowed values of this integer m1, and the corresponding values of the central charge, and the values of the conformal dimension of the non-identity primary. And amazingly, in almost every case, you could identify, so if you give any mathematician who knows a little bit about Lie groups this list, they'll immediately see that these are the dimensions of some very, very nice low rank Lie algebras, SU2, SU3, G2, SO8, F4, E6, E7, and even E8. A few odd things happen. For example, the first one has no associated Lie algebra. It turns out, I don't want to dwell on this because it will take time, that here we have, since this doesn't correspond to a CFT, but if you switch identity and non-identity primaries, then, so normally we define identity to be the one which has the lower exponent alpha, but in a non-unitary theory it could have the higher one. If you accept that, then it's a famous minimal model, C equals minus 22 by 5, the Lie and its singularity. All the others, the beautiful thing is that they all fell into place. And the reason why we are excited about our new work is that none of it falls into place in the same way, and that raises a puzzle which needs to be solved. This theory later got ruled out in our subsequent paper using fusion rules, but it passes all these tests. It fails some higher test. Okay. And of course, these are also all the known two-character current algebra theories. So all of them are current algebra theories, practically. Okay, but nobody looked at theories with L greater than or equal to 2, and there was a prediction which actually we goofed a little bit and didn't know, or didn't remember, I guess, by Kiritsis. So we got a mail from him. But in fact, it's very interesting. After we compared his predictions, we found that we shouldn't have found anything at L equals 2, but we did find something. So there's still something to be done. So this talk might be slightly premature in the sense the subject is a little evolving, but let me report on what we found. So luckily now it's very easy to report on what we found. I've set all the kind of the scenario is all set, but it's nice to see how some things are the same and some things are different. First of all, when L is 2, we have a different differential equation with E6 by E4 in it. I've showed you that. You find this relation, so 5c is again an integer. M1 is given by this for some integer n tilde, so again it's a finite set, and this time the set has 31 possible theories. And now if you check, now you have to check other integers, so now I'm giving you more details. So we look at M2 and M3 in the identity module. If any of these is negative or fractional, the theory is dead. So anytime a single one of these is fractional or negative, and I emphasize they don't even have any reason to be integer, they just have to be rational, so they could be fractional or negative with no difficulty, and the theory is dead right there. However, this many theories survive exactly just looking at M2 and M3. Now we must look at the other character. Now we can either look at the other m's in the identity or look at the m's in the other character. M and 1, their denominators start growing without limit. And sometimes you find that the denominators are fixed already up to 10th level and remain bounded by those up to the 5000th level. So you see the difference between theories which are behaving good and behaving bad. And I'll show you some tables to illustrate that. So for some candidate theories, these non-identity degeneracies are fractions whose denominator remains relatively small. I'll explain in a moment. And it becomes stable by the time we reach the 10th level. In such cases, we can simply normalize the ground state and we have its degeneracy, and then everything is integer. In other cases, the denominator keeps increasing as we increase n, and in this situation, we must rule out the candidate. This rules out only one of the 10 theories we just listed. This is a very stringent set of tests and rules out only one theory, and the other 9 survive all the tests up to level 5000, and we propose these are new two-character CFTs. I'll show you a table. Interestingly, when the ones which fail one of the tests also fail the other tests. That's a nice thing, that you can have a test based on the identity character or the non-identity character. The tests are different. In one case, we are watching out for negative or rational. In the other case, we are watching out for rational with not too large a denominator. Both things tend to fail or pass depending on the values of parameters together. So here is the table. N tilde has no physical meaning, so you can ignore this column. These are the central charges. And notice that they all lie between 16 and 24. These are the conformal dimensions of the other primary. And these are the positive integer values of the first level excited state in the identity character. These are the degeneracies of the ground state in the other primary. So the other primary has to be, the non-trivial primary, has to have a degeneracy as large as this. But this number is nothing but 19 times 29 times 59. all primary, and no more, and it stays, and it's like that up to 10th level. You already see 19, 29 and 59, and until 5000th level, it's merrily going with 19, 29 and 15, 59. I'll show you that. So that's the kind of thing which we find very interesting.
And what was when you broke it up into factors, I mean, there was a significance to each of those?
Well, you get a lot of prime numbers in the bit below 100, 23s, 19s, 11s, 13s. And some of them you can identify with factors of the monster group dimension, but we couldn't make too much out of it. But there's some numerology certainly for people interested. Okay. Now the result has a few puzzles. One is we find central charges only in the range 16 to 24. That's not a puzzle by itself, but these central charges differ by precisely 16 from the list which we found in 1988, this list. So numerologically, if I add 16 to this list, I get our list. Okay. Moreover, the H's I get by adding 1 to this list. So you would think that this is a tensor product, set of tensor product theories we found, but it can't be. Because if I tensor product theories, then this integer L increases, and we are looking at theories with L equals 2. So they actually cannot be, these cannot be tensor products of known theories.
I missed that. So why the central charge multiplies? Is it?
Sorry, that it does.
And the dimension in the tensor product should...
So one interesting thing is if I took a 2-character theory and tensored it with another 2-character theory, I would get a 4-character theory or at the least a 3-character theory. So that it can't be. This is 2-character theory. If I tensor it with a 1-character theory, then the H cannot change. Because the same 1 character multiplies both the characters, so central charge changes, but H, the conformal dimension, can't change. So there's quite a big mystery about what is going on here. At the same time, these match so well with the theories we found in 1988 up to a shift of 16. It's obvious that you could get a shift of 16 by multiplying by j to the 2/3, but these are not those theories. Multiply by j to the 2/3, you get different theories which are easy to work out their properties. Also, these numbers, the last 2 columns, simply don't match between us and the theories that I showed you before. Simply don't match. So puzzle. That's puzzle 1.
Sorry.
Yes.
Could they be orbitals? Like,
Could they be
not just tensor, but
yes.
also
Maybe
mod out by sums?
Yes, they might be. They might be. I'm not sure of that. We haven't ruled that out completely.
And more generally, do we know how orbital by sum?
But the problem is that I don't know what to tensor by, because once I tensor, okay, so when I tensor, I increase the value of L. Okay, the minimum L for a 1-character theory is 2. So if I tensor both the characters of a 2-character theory, then I add 2 and 2, which is 4. So any tensor theory starts at L equals 4, and in fact at L equals 4 we found the tensor theories. Now, is there a way to quotient them with changes? That's a puzzle. Yeah, I don't know. There could be something, it's just, I just don't see it right away. That's one puzzle. So as I said, we can't find these relations between the degeneracies. This is the statement, they cannot be tensors. We didn't find any, so this is one amazing thing. Here if you look at M1, you don't say, aha, Kac-Moody algebra. These numbers don't remind you of anything, as far as I can see. Maybe again there's some numerology that we are missing. And finally, if we look at Kiritz's predictions, his argument suggests that there is nothing at L equals 2. He didn't say it in those words, but we checked his argument and his final answer, and it has nothing at L equals 2. So why are we finding theories at L equals 2? Again, we find that we can match with some things in his lists by shifting the central charge by 4. So there's some numerology, but it's really not clear what the basis is.
How can he come up with this list?
So he actually did a very clever thing, which I believe that there's something not right completely with the paper, but the idea is very clever. He argued that theories with L not 0 are all tensors of theories with L equals 0 and something involving 1-character theories, but the factors, neither of them has to be a valid CFT, only the tensor product has to be valid. Okay, and he did this arguing about singular points and differential equations. It's quite beautiful. In fact, he wrote to us that he used arguments of Deligne, so I was quite, as you can imagine, it's quite a punch in the face when somebody says that. But I think it's right. I think fundamentally, but something is not right because I think he didn't specify what you're allowed to tensor. But it could be that all theories with positive L are tensors of something general, which are not themselves alone CFTs. You can easily tensor two things which fail the criteria for positive integer coefficients, but after tensoring they pass. So he has such candidates, but I think everything isn't clear. Maybe in the end this will be resolved. I think we can get his paper exactly right. Maybe come and get it exactly. Now
you seem to use the less restrictive criteria, right? That is, all of his tensor theories, if I understand, would be allowed as per your criteria.
Yes.
But you have a
so we did a prosaic analysis and we found something which somehow in the law was not there, and now the law has to be corrected, or we have to be corrected, or something has to happen to see why these theories are. Now I'm done. Basically, let me show you some numbers for your amusement. So here's a theory which passes our test, the theory with C equals 118 by 50 by 5. These are the degeneracies at level from 31 up to 40 of the identity character. You see that faithfully these are all positive integers. They always grow as you go up. And notice that these all have denominator 551 except this has 29. This is slightly misleading because below 30 there were already some with denominator 59 as well. 551 is 19 times 29. So if you take all that data into account, you get 19 times 29 times 59, which is the number I quoted earlier. But you see that the number remains steady over a range of 10, at least 10. Actually, it remains steady all the way up to 5,000, but it becomes too large to write on a transparency. Okay, this is the behavior of a well-behaved theory. Here, all positive integers. Here, all positive rationals with a non-growing denominator. Now look at the behavior of another point which would have had C equals 28.
I think ICTS also.
Yeah, ICTS. Sorry. Mike came on and went off.
No, I was just wondering, the fact that these numbers grow with n is always it's just an observation. I mean, it's not something you put in directly, right?
No, we didn't put it in because these are just the results of solving a differential equation. But I think there's a general expectation that in all such things the degeneracies, the numbers do grow with n. And I'm pretty sure in J, for example, it's certainly true, and the growth I think you can easily find. J of
I meant that this was not a cut that you did in the sense that you didn't require that they grow. It seems a natural requirement, but you didn't require that.
We didn't require. That's correct. Actually, I must tell you that when my student shared his files with me for the Mathematica program, there were some which seemed to be some cases where it seemed to be decreasing, and I was very alarmed, decreasing with n. But turned out that in that particular file he had listed them in decreasing order. So it was just a bug in what we were discussing. But in every case we checked carefully that they increased, but we never put that in as a data.
I mean, of course, this is only for unitary things, but one could try to see whether there's a sort of a Cardi growth or something with that maybe sort of at least give you some sense whether it's, the growth is that of a unitary theory, since you know the central charge and you have fairly high levels.
Good point. So we could check that although Cardi shouldn't apply, right, because C is quite small here. But or should it?
No, I mean
it should because we have to high enough levels. Yeah.
High levels.
Yeah, you're right.
High enough levels.
You're right. Good. So whether Cardi growth gives an extra constraint over and above what we have.
I mean, that would of course be for unitary theory.
Sure. But personally, my guess is that it would not, that these automatically have that even for the bad theories.
I mean, modular.
Yeah, maybe that's because the modular invariant built in a sense,
That's right. Okay, yeah.
But Just to ask you, so in this case, where you get these, what were 29 and whatever,
19 and 59.
and 59. So the idea would be, if there is a consistent CFT, then the first character, which has the non-trivial
Yeah,
primary,
its ground state is that number.
ground state is that number, huge number.
Huge number. Well, it's only 15,000 or something.
Yeah.
And that's it. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then everything.
And then everything is integer. Exactly. Exactly that.
I mean, pretty exotic theories compared to what we know, right?
Reasonably, yes, I agree with that. I agree with that. Now, here is an example of a bad theory, but it's just C equals 28. The previous had C equals 118 by 5. Both of them passed the test for M1 of 0. Okay? That was the 0th order test, that the first degeneracy about the identity should be positive integer. So this theory also had passed that, but it failed as soon as we went above the first level, very soon actually. But you can see that in this range, all these are integer, which they didn't have to be, but they are all negative as well. On the other hand, this is more fun. You see that these denominators are just growing, and they grow even between 31 and 40. They have grown from that length to that length. You see, as against the guy which was in a very disciplined way, keeping 551 in its denominator all the way. And this property persisting till 5000 we consider is a very major clue. But I also think mathematically these are provable, in the sense it must be that something is true to some order, it can be proved to be true to all orders. I think that has to be the case. I mean, some generalized Cardi-like, or whatever you want to call it. This is not Cardi, this is about denominators, but I think you can still, there must be a mathematical theorem. So I'm out of time and also out of the talk. So let me just tell you what happens at L equals 3. Interestingly, no theories. So it's not like you always find them. There was one theory which was trying to survive, and it had C equals 8. But the calculation showed that the second character has all vanishing degeneracies. So it's not there. So it's a one character theory masquerading as a two character theory. Okay? And in fact, it came twice. Once in which the identity character had vanishing degeneracies, and once with the non-identity character had vanishing degeneracies. But both ways, it was the same theory, and it's J to the 1/3 known as the E8 character. And Shiraz asked earlier, so J transformed by a phase, but we are only looking at non-chiral theories whose partition function is chi mod square. So E8 is a valid non-chiral theory, it's not a valid chiral theory.
Do you find all one character theories embedded in the two character theories?
No, and that's also a very good question. In fact, all one character theories, this is already was studied by Gabbardine and Keller many years ago. One character theories reappear as two character theories at higher values of L, but those values of L can be very large. So at L equals 2 or 3, we are not going to find all of them. We can't, in fact. But for some sufficiently large L, you should find. Alternatively, you can have, let's say, 3 character theory at small L, and you may find it there. So the one character theories show up in all higher character theories, but where they show up is a little tricky.
Is there some systematics to what L will come?
No, I think not. The one character theories alone you can easily calculate L, because there's only one character and it's just the number of zeros. But where it shows up in higher order is an open question. In fact, it was a very important question in Gabbardille's work. So that remains an open question. That given a one character theory, where will it show up in the study of higher character theories? It's not a solved question as far as that.
I'm missing something. So when you say it will show up in the higher character theory, you're classifying things starting with the L, right?
Yes.
And then
yes. So P and L, P number of characters and L is L.
Okay.
So a given one character theory might show up at P equals 3 and L equals 0. It may also show up at P equals 2 and L equals 4. There are various ways it can show up.
I see, that's the same data, is it?
It's not quite the same data, but I'm just giving 2 examples. But it can show up in different. The point is that if you have a high character theory and some of the characters are spurious, then your calculation of L is actually wrong for that high character theory. Because you're calculating it assuming all the characters are genuine. But if one is spurious, then so spurious characters is an interesting.
What is a spurious character?
So, for example, it's all its degeneracies are 0. That's one example. There's also another interesting example. So, Gabbardine, we had this first. So, if you're putting this on the net, I'll say it again. We had this first. So this theory, which we had in this last line, is a two-character theory with central charge 8 and h being apparently 5/6. Now here the weird thing is it really has two characters. The second character, the one with 5/6, is a badly behaved character in the sense that its denominators increase as you go up. So you would be inclined to reject this line, but you can accept it if you just manually kill off the second character. But now you have a puzzle. Modular transformations would normally mix the two, but it can always happen that exceptionally, and it turns out to be true in this case, that the modular transformation matrix mixes the second with the first, but not the first with the second. It's a matrix which has a 0 in one diagonal and not in the other. And we checked that. That's why we wrote contains the k equals 1 E8 model. So Gabriel took this further and actually calculated for this 5/6 primary to higher orders and found the denominators growing rapidly. We simply realized that this can't be a valid theory, but this alone is a valid theory. So these are the kind of things we find. So, number theoretically, it's just a lot of fun and it involves only simple things about Mathematica. But we find no true two-character theories with L equals 3. For L equals 4 onwards, the differential equation has two free parameters. Now you can't remember that we fixed our parameter in terms of two exponents whose sum is already constrained. So the product gives one parameter. Now we have two exponents and two parameters, so one of these two parameters remains free.
And does it remain a free integer or free real?
It remains a free real number for the moment. The thing to do now is to go to the next level, the second level above the identity. In terms of two integers m1 and m2, you can constrain the parameters.
So you always get discrete.
You always get discrete, but you need to go. So the first cut already has to be at a higher level. So in this way, we are trying to systematize the old papers that we had written. We have a paper on three-character theories in 1988, which is very long and has lots of stuff. But finally, there we could show easily that, by example, that there are infinitely many theories, and then we gave up. But now I think with some more systematics and again using null vectors and other input, maybe we can do better. Three characters is not classified, but we plan to work on that along with these kind of two-character theories because the number of parameters seems to be important. So, and as I mentioned earlier, all L equals 0 theories multiplied by j to the 1/3 reappear as L equals 4 theories. So those are examples. And so these are my conclusions. I think I've said everything a few times. So we've classified all the one-parameter differential equations. This was done previously. 2 and 3 are new. 2, we find 9 theories in this range. These theories should be subjected to these kind of tests, fusion rules, and so on. For 3, we were able to rule out the existence of CFTs. And for large numbers of characters, the project is very difficult, so one should combine it with other inputs, or one should try to find some qualitative features of those theories. By the way, just one little thing, since you have all followed so carefully, for 3 characters, one can actually find unbounded central charge even with L equals 0. So the boundedness is not there for 3 characters. And the example is SON or SUN, Wess-Wiener-Witten models at level 1. They just go up to infinity, central charge, and they all have 3 characters. Because you always find the identity, fundamental and the fundamental bar. Well, it's SUN or SON, so it's not half, it's fundamental and it's fundamental. So one complex primary and the identity, that makes 2 characters. So with that, I'll stop. Thanks very much for your patience.
ICDS.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll go ahead. Any questions right now?
They're asking any questions.
Yes. Okay, TI got questions.
So, when you have one character series masquerading as 2 character series, you generally expect that this corresponds to M having a 0 eigenvalue, right?
M having a 0 eigenvalue. Yeah, not eigenvalue, not necessarily eigenvalue. M you mean the modular transformation matrix.
The MIJ matrix, the one that appears in the partition.
Exactly. The thing is, it doesn't need to have a zero eigenvalue, it just needs to have a zero. So for example, if I have two characters, chi1 and chi0 and chi1, and then I have here something which is something 0, something, something, then the result is something times chi0, and downstairs something times chi0 plus something times chi1. So chi0 doesn't transform, but chi1 transforms. Okay? So this is good. So now if I say that I abolish chi1, I'm fine because chi0 is, and this will be a phase also, then I'm in business. So there's no zero eigenvalue as such, but just a zero in this place.
But in the two theories have different partition forces, right?
Yes. You have to manually reject the second character. So then you have a situation where viewed as a two-character theory, it's there and it's not valid. But if you reject one of the characters, it's still modular transfer invariant and it's valid.
But the main issue I had was that didn't you start assuming that MIJ was identity?
No. So that's a different MIJ. I guess MIJ and yeah, you're right. You're right. I did start by assuming that MIJ is identity. So in that sense, at this level, the theories, the EA theory as a two-character theory will fail, and I'll throw it out. But at the last moment before I've thrown it out, I realized that actually part of it is a valid theory. But you're right. Technically, it fails this test, so it just isn't there.
Okay.
But then you can't help breaking when you see something with central charge 8 and degeneracy 248. Those who were around in 1984 can never forget 248 and 496. So that's when you realize there must be something going on.
One question. So in the n equals to 0 case with the two characters, since you've identified that you have this table from 1988 where you identified the CFTs, can one then identify the differential equations that you had with the corresponding null vector for those CFTs and then try to use that for the n equals to 2 theories, knowing sort of translation between the differential equations and the null vectors, and maybe try to extract some from there.
That's a very nice suggestion. I think one should do that. I think that's exactly
translation for the n equals to 0 case, was it done? Did you people look at it in 1988?
No, we didn't know that. We didn't then have the idea. Schu's paper is 96, so we didn't actually know that the differential equation is argued to arise from null vectors. For us, null vectors was one thing and differential equations was just a different thing.
I see. So the idea wasn't even, the differential equation, I thought because that's what you have normally in a rational CFT, you get, at least for the sphere, you have this Knish-Xonological equation. That was the differential equation you got from the null vectors, right?
But those were for the correlators. So some of the fact that you get them from null vectors for the character was less obvious, I feel.
You don't have a modular parameter there and so on, right?
Well, you have the 4-point function.
You have the analog.
It is exactly the analog because it's the conformal block. The sphere 4-point function, you have a conformal block and you have a differential equation that is a base which is coming from the null vector, and so now the torus conformal block, this is the analogous equation, and it does look like some L-1 square. I think the L-1 operator on the torus would be like the D operator or D to the operator in some sense. So this looks like some L-1 square minus something.
You're absolutely right. And actually, I'm ashamed that we didn't realize it because in our papers, one of our papers, the first one we wrote together in 88, was called Differential Equations for Correlators and Characters. So we had used correlators and characters in the title together as if it's the same thing, and what you're telling me now is, of course, it is the same thing in the sense that both are conformal blocks and both have the same behavior. And we know that for correlators, these arise from Knižník-Zamolod-Číkov in some, to be honest, we didn't expect that all CFTs come from current algebra, and in fact they don't, right? But when we found that two character L equals 0 theories all come from current algebra, we were a little surprised. So we were hoping that differential equations is more general than null vectors. I think that's what we were hoping.
Okay.
And Zhu doesn't disagree with that. He's simply saying that, well, they might be null vectors for some extended chiral algebra with higher spin and all. And in 88, W algebras were just slightly known, but now, I think higher spin have much more there's much more knowledge about them.
Thanks.
Can you can constrain more with using the conformal symmetry and then unitarity?
Unitarity at this, I think at this level, the thing that counts is more than unitarity. Or conformal symmetry is somehow built in. I think. I don't think there will be anything. The Virasoro algebra probably by itself doesn't have more to tell us, because we already know that for C less than 1 you have minimal series, and for C greater than 1 basically Virasoro algebra is quite agnostic. It just says that it can classify things into towers, but there are no null vectors of Virasoro, and that's it. However, what you can use is fusion rules. So if you can find the modular transformation matrix for the characters, Sij, then you can write this famous formula, which is that S, so N I J K is, I don't know, Si0, Sj0, S dagger K0 over S00. So this is the famous Verlinde formula. And the important thing is these have to be positive integer again. And at least if you, in one case we found that this comes out to be negative integer for that C equals minus 22 by 5. If you insist on making the canonical identification as a unitary theory. Once you switch the characters, then this becomes a positive, because remember S00 depends on the choice of which is the identity character out of the two. And so this is asymmetric between identity and non-identity, very asymmetric. And so we found that this comes out to be positive only with the correct identification. We also had one example where in one way this is negative, in the other way it's positive, but now the identity character is degenerate. So you rule out the theory both looking at it both ways. That's this theory. C equals 38 by 5, which we were hopeful was the first new thing we had found. This one in this line was the only one that we couldn't match with any known thing. Turns out if you view it as a C equals 38 by 5 theory with H 4/5, then it has negative fusion rules. If you now swap identity and non-identity, then it has positive fusion rules, but the identity primary has 57-fold degeneracy of the ground state. So both ways it fits. It's the only such example.
So a quick clarification. So this table is the complete list of two character theories that you can get from current algebras?
I think that's true. That I haven't actually absolutely established that, but I think it's true. And the reason is, if you just go naively, so these are all exceptional, so they have no series, they're not part of any series. But SO8 you could go on to SO10, and for SU3 you could go to SU4. Both of these are 3 character theories, and in fact they remain 3 character theories for all values of k. For all values of n with fixed k equals 1. And the reason why there are 2 character theories here is that what is the reason? I think gosh, now I don't even know the reason. SO8 is because of triality. You see, SO8 really has 3 primaries: the vector, the spinner, and the conjugate spinner. But because it's SO8, triality makes them all have the same character. So here, actually, the modular, the partition function is diagonal 1, 3, because the same character occurs 3 times due to triality. But SO10 doesn't have triality, so you're bound to go to more characters. Sorry, it's been a really long. I admire your patience.
So just maybe scattered thoughts. I I think in the context of this black hole entropy counting, Samir Murthy and Greenman maybe were considering similar these vector valued forms, but now I think these more sophisticated ones, I think with additional chemical potential. And they had some results about, I think in general in these things there are results about the positivity of the coefficients once the first few are known, first some n finite number of them are known. So they had shown, I think, similar positivity things, at least for a certain class of similar vector valued forms. So I just thought there's this.
Well, thanks very much.
Yeah, so usually it's like these polar terms and so on. Once you know the sort of the polar terms, that sort of specifies all the other coefficients, and then you can fix the positivity once you know the polar terms. Yeah. Okay.
No, that's very good. I think I should certainly look at those papers. Yeah, thanks. That's a very useful suggestion.
What is the Moore and Seiberg?
So Moore and Seiberg is about correlation functions, 4-point functions on the plane, and I think 1-point function on the torus. And there are some equations. They have some polynomial equations which are to be satisfied by the monodromies of the plane. So one would like, again, I don't know if it's possible for a theory to pass everything and fail that. We don't have any examples. Partly because, this list, once we could identify all of them with current algebra, they were through. We knew what they are and there was nothing to test. They had to pass everything.
Yeah,
but with our new theories, there are absolutely. So that's all stuff that right now it's just ideas of what we should check. But one nice thing would be to solve, I didn't mention, but you can solve the characters as functions of this lambda invariant by mapping the differential equation to a hypergeometric, to a Fuchsian differential equation, and the solution you get in terms of hypergeometric functions. That holds for this class of theories. The L equals 2 theories is not Fuchsian directly, but I think Kiritzis' idea is that by some multiplication by J you can map it to those. I think the idea is roughly that. So we should be able to solve, so we want to solve the characters in that. In fact, actually my student Harsha, I forgot to mention by the way, he is a 5th year master's student. He wanted to solve for the characters because then you can check fusion rules at least. And that's a very important check.
Okay, so let's thank Sunil again.